Why aren't we taught about money in school? In this video, we figure out why most of us graduate high school with an incomplete education on money and learn what they were supposed to teach us in school ourselves. Thank you to Shopify for sponsoring a portion of this video.
I am stressed about money. I'm always stressed about money. I'm stressed when I don't have money, which feels understandable. I'm stressed when I do have money. I'm stressed when I'm spending money, and I'm also stressed when I'm saving it. I'm always worried about what I'm actually supposed to be doing. Am I saving too little? Am I spending too much? I just don't know. These feel like pretty basic questions I should probably know the answer to, and now that I'm an adult, turns out money's involved in a lot of things, so I'm stressed a lot. The way that I deal with this right now is I just save as much money as I can because apparently saving's good, but that doesn't really feel like a well-adjusted way to react to being stressed about money. I literally got so stressed out that I procrastinated buying things that I actually needed on Black Friday and then just had to pay more the next day for the same stuff. I feel like I'm not the only one. I have some friends who are equally as stressed out about money, but the way that they deal with it is also very well-adjusted, which is never look at the bank account, and it's not a problem if you don't think about it. I think both types of people are suffering from the same problem, which is we didn't get taught about money in school.
I was there. I went to school. Every day I showed up to my lessons. Too early, by the way. What was that about? Where was the lessons on money? Not to be the kid that's like, miss, when are we going to use that in the real world? But I feel like putting in a couple lessons about things that we'll need in the real world seems like an obvious thing to do. I feel like they could have slipped in a little bit of financial education, like just a small little morsel of what I'm supposed to be doing with money now. You know, like, here's how Pythagoras budgeted for his clay tablets. Here's what the crypto bros would have been doing during the Dark Ages. Here's how King Henry VIII was investing in stocks. I'm not saying that the stuff we got taught in school was useless. I think it's very interesting. But what I am saying is that there were useful things in school that we weren't taught. And I feel like money is one of those. And I'm not the only one anxious about money. Studies show the Zoomers are anxious too.
This report shows that 67% of us aren't confident with planning our financial future, and most of us don't feel equipped handling money. I could have told you that for free. In fact, I just did. But if you like bad news, I have good news for you. It gets worse. So many of us, especially those of us cursed with being American, are saddled with debt. Not only are the Zoomers stressed, but they're drowning in debt. Lovely.
The feeling of having $14 in your checking account is so frightening. Begging and borrowing and panicking. That's what it feels like to have debt. My name is Grant O'Brien. I'm a writer and actor, and I'm one of the co-creators of the show Total Forgiveness.
This is like a stunt show in which we pay off your student loans.
Yes. A reality show ostensibly about student loans that ended up being about friendship.
We're going to give Allie a Oompa Loompa makeover.
You have to sell everything you own.
And not being all that funny in the end, but still very good. I'm terribly proud of it.
I owe $95,441. You know, I'm going to pay this off maybe before I die.
I went into a branch of Bank One. They'll show you on a piece of paper. Your payments will be this number a month for this many years. Something like $800 a month, some massive amount of money. And I thought, well, that just must be what adults make. These people in suits wouldn't give me this amount of money if they didn't think I could pay it to them, would they? I remember a phone call with my mom once. She got a phone call from a debt collector because I was 2 months behind on debt. She'd sent me, I want to say $1,000 to put on my loans. And I did, but they were calling and saying, hey, your son owes $1,600. And she was calling and saying, where did all that money go? And I had to break her heart a little bit and kind of show her the reality of it went fast. It went as quickly out the door as it came in the door. That's what it's like to have student loans. That's the feeling of really needing money when you don't have it, is you do go to some dark places. You push yourself to places you don't necessarily want to go.
So that's just great. We're graduating underprepared for the amount of debt we have to take on and undereducated on how we're supposed to handle our finances. However, it gets worse, because if we're taking on student debt in order to access economic opportunities, then how's the economy doing? It's doing good, right? Right? It seems like most of the workforce hasn't seen their wages increase in line with how much it costs to live, and it's more expensive than ever to go to university. That's not to say that everyone is doomed to a life of misery. The modern economy has tons of opportunities to learn and make money. I mean, my job doesn't exist 20 years ago, and without it, I can't really justify talking to myself for a living. It just means that if you're feeling behind because the boomers in your life are telling you that they could buy a house by the time they were your age, don't worry, you're not behind. It's just become a lot harder financially for the everyday person. In the words of philosopher and generational talent Olivia Rodrigo,
It's brutal out here.
Not gonna lie, all of this makes me feel
a lot more stressed out and hopeless than before I even started.
And I don't know if I believe that. There seems to be a lot more resources around financial education available to me now more than ever. And there seems to be a lot more productive conversations around the importance of financial education happening too. But the thing is, I studied economics at university. Theoretically, I have an education on money. But outside of being qualified to explain to tech bros why everything isn't just supply and demand, I feel like I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing with my own money. And even if I did, I feel like I shouldn't need a degree in economics to know how to save and spend. After doing some research, I think we can explain the lack of education in schools around money in two different ways. Before, we thought that school was for nerds to do nerd things. The priority was on academia, maths, science, and facts about the Queen. But now there's more of an appetite for life skills, that's communication, organization, and facts about the Queen. Historically, life skills have been seen as the responsibility of the parents. But this has its flaws. With money skills, the wealthy would pass on good financial knowledge to their children, but those without would perpetuate harmful stereotypes and bad attitudes towards money.
The vast majority of our financial lessons come from our primary carers. If money is like a scarcity, we use phrases like money don't grow on trees. So, well, that's true, but actually that can breed a scarcity mindset, which can follow people throughout their entire adult lives.
A robust educational curriculum would give everyone the chance to start life with confidence around money. But now things are changing. Those within education are more aware that we need to be teaching life skills like money skills and facts about the Queen, not those facts about the Queen. But that's the past. Now we all agree that we should be learning about money in schools, so why don't we? The classroom has a lot of demands on its time. There's a lot that teachers need to get through. Personal finance often gets deprioritized in favor of key skills like maths, science, and facts about the Queen. But it's not just a lack of time in the classroom. Teachers themselves need to be trained and given resources on how to teach personal finance. It's difficult for an average teacher to know what they're supposed to be teaching, especially when their own understanding of money might be incomplete. And there you have it, a mixture of historical attitudes and a lack of resources in classrooms. That's why we don't get taught about money in school. I love it when a video comes together and has a satisfying conclusion.
We were. It's part of the national curriculum. At primary age, basic sort of spending decisions, should be able to calculate with money, keeping money safe. But even at secondary level, it's part of the maths curriculum. The problem is, a couple of studies done recently, and it shows that 2/3 of kids have no memory of being taught about money at school, even though they should have been.
Apparently, we were taught about money in school. So it seems like the way we're taught about money in school is a bit whack. It's often combined with maths and is just not emphasized in ways that feel relevant and memorable.
There was one day in one math class when they taught us how to balance a checkbook, which is something that even at the time no one needed. Like even then, that was already taken care of at your bank. So whatever financial literacy is taught in schools is oftentimes yesterday's battle.
And this stuff is really important. Financial literacy can literally help close wealth gaps, reduce inequity, and even help with social issues. In fact, with technology, scientists are able to visualize a 99% accurate representation of what society would look like if all of us got a financial education.
None of us can go through life without a practical working understanding of how money works.
So here's a practical understanding of money. Why should you listen to me? I don't know. You probably shouldn't. Using your own common sense and finding consensus from multiple reliable sources is a really important way to learn about money. Don't just take it from me. This guy said it as well, and he's qualified.
One of the things we need to do is never believe a single source. But we need to put the work in. We need to consider lots of different viewpoints, and consensus will emerge.
However, even though I'm not an expert, what I am is someone in a similar position to you, stressed out and confused. What am I supposed to be learning? Where am I supposed to start? This is where you start. Hi, I'm Taha. We're going to create a map to help you in your personal understanding of money. They call me the Dora the Explorer of money. Let's go. Whoa, before we start on this roller coaster, don't worry, it's really simple. Learning about personal finance isn't about becoming rich. It's not even about having good math skills. Getting a handle on your finances is about not stressing about living at the edge of your financial life the whole time. Even high income people can sometimes be strained financially because they just don't know how to handle their finances. You don't want that. You want to live a stress-free life. I'm on a beach, and that's because I live a sensible financial life. So even though this might be a lot of information, start small. Fix one or two things about your personal financial life, and then move on to the next stuff. Even just looking at your spending every day or every week can be an important step in your financial journey. Sometimes trying to fix everything at once is a bad idea. It can lead to people being overwhelmed and avoidant. So enough of the pep talk. Welcome to Taha's Map of Money. Basically, there's a few things that you need to be worried about when it comes to money. Making money, keeping money, spending money. Bish bash bosh. There's a lot more that you can dive into, but those are the major categories. And if you're interested in learning more, a lot of this section is based on this book, so shout out to this book. It's a bit dated because it's from the 2000s, and there's a lot of websites in here that no longer work, but you get the general idea. So, making money. Unless you're a nepo baby, you're probably gonna have to get a job. And we made a whole series about careers and how to do that, so you can watch that if you wanna know more. It's always a good idea to understand how you could be making more money if you need to. Learning how to ask for a raise and think about your career is a really important step in your personal finance journey. We made a video on that as well. The other thing you can be doing is a side hustle. Maybe you can do some freelancing or dog walking or selling stuff online. And if you're thinking, damn, that sounds pretty good, maybe you'll be interested in the resources from our sponsor, Shopify. Shopify is a commerce platform that helps people sell online and in person, but they also have a lot of reliable information about learning how to make money on the side. From in-depth how-to guides and blog posts, all the way to full-on courses, a lot of which are free. Have you ever wondered how to make a marketing plan for your knitting business? Shopify have you covered. Are you interested in starting a business? Shopify have resources for you as well. In fact, we use Shopify not only to sell our curiosity journal, but also as a resource to learn how to do this stuff. If you've always wanted to run your own business, maybe you'll find something in Shopify's resources that'll help you quit your job and go out on your own. This blog post on starting a business is a really great place to learn if you want to get into entrepreneurship. Click the link in the description for the blog post and a free trial of Shopify now. Thanks to Shopify for helping entrepreneurs build their business. Now that we've made some money, let's go spend it. Stop. Before we spend our money, we should probably figure out how we use our money. This is called a budget. A budget doesn't need to be complicated or use a spreadsheet. It can be pretty simple. My budget's in my notes app. If you don't know where to start, you can't really go wrong with the 20-30-50 rule. 50% on your needs like utilities, rent, food, that type of stuff. 30% on your wants like an inflatable bouncy castle or the Answer in Progress Patreon. And 20% goes to saving for the future. That's a pretty basic way to split up your budget, and maybe it doesn't work for you, but if you don't know where to start there. You might be saying, Taha, I've tried a budget before, but they never work. And this is a good point. The common reasons budgets fail are that they're too complicated or don't reflect your values or reality. Try and be realistic with your budget. Don't try and budget for a perfect world where you never order out when you know you do. A budget is supposed to reflect your reality and the things that you're passionate about. That's the whole point of having money, is to spend it on things that you want to spend them on. Sometimes budgets fail because it's a chore. If you don't like using spreadsheets, do it in a notes app. If you don't like a notes app, do it on paper. The most important thing is that there is a structure to the way that you're spending your money. And finally, having an emergency fund is really important. Having 1 month of expenses in the bank as a reserve is a really important way to feel confident in your financial life. If you don't have any savings, that's the thing that most people recommend starting with. Even if you're in debt, it seems like it's more important to protect yourself from getting into more debt by having no financial reserve. So living below your means, having a budget and having an emergency fund broadly seem like the basics of spending money. So now that we've covered making money and spending money, what about the money that we're saving? So you got some money to save, eh? You should give it to me. Trust me, I'm an influencer online. When it comes to saving money, like I said before, it's important to have an emergency fund, money that's in a bank account that's cash. This is good for if your phone cracks or if you need to pay a wizard to bring you back to being a human. These are both realistic scenarios in which you would need an emergency fund. With the rest of your savings, you should be considering putting stuff in a savings account or even investing. Savings account is pretty straightforward. You put money in a bank account, the bank guarantees you an interest rate, the bank keeps your money, sometimes for a defined period of time, and then they give you a little bit extra. Bish bash bosh. Investing is a lot more complicated and it's a little bit more scary. As a beginner, it's important to go slowly and figure out what you're comfortable with. Because unlike in a bank account, with investments you could lose your money as well as gain money. This is a pretty risky area, but there are ways to do this very riskily and also pretty safely. Index funds and government bonds are a more reliable way to invest, whereas single stocks are usually a lot more risky. The point of this type of investing is to see a lot of growth in the long term after 10, 20, or even 30 years rather than short-term gains. So it's important to start early, even if it's just a little bit.
Anything that promises you a magic solution in like 2 weeks or 2 years even, it is too good to be true. Crypto, it's new. Day trading, spread betting, that's all relatively new. There are some sort of golden, timeless truths that you need to look out for. Build wealth by investing in 2 things primarily: businesses and bricks, by which I mean shares and property. Those are the things that have made wealth for people for centuries.
As a beginner myself, I have all of my investments in index funds. They just invest in the entire economy and I just sort of set it and forget it. The most common investing advice is to diversify, to have a lot of investments in a lot of different places. Index funds are one way that you can do that because they invest in a broad range of stocks in a lot of companies. If you want to know more about investing, I'll leave some resources in the description, but you should go slowly and only do things that you're comfortable with. This is an area in which a lot of scams and bad financial advice accumulate. It's important to understand what you're getting yourself into. It's also not always the case that if something's done well in the past, it's going to do well in the future. So that's storing money. Pretty simple. Making money, spending money, storing money. Bish, bash, bosh. If you just glazed over that entire section because there's a lot going on, there's only 3 key things you have to remember. Take it away, Pete.
98% of the population, that's all they'll ever need to know. They don't need to know about fancy investing techniques. They don't need to know about complicated tax angles. They just need to spend less than they earn, insure against the stuff they can't control, and put money away for the future. It's as simple as that. I'm telling you, I've been doing this 25 years, and my clients are deca millionaires, some of them, 8-figure net worth, and that's all they've done. I don't have any clients that have won the lottery. That's all they've done. It works, but it takes time.
Other than making money, spending money, and saving money, the other major part of personal finance is debt. Debt is a lot more situational, personal, and complicated. That's kind of by design. A lot of the time, debt providers are using this complexity to make it harder to pay off and understand your debt. So consider seeking professional help and financial advice. A lot of the time, these guys will do free initial consultations, and there might even be free resources in your area from government or non-profits. But the thing that I've been most confused about is good debt and bad debt.
There's a fairly simple definition of good and bad debt. Good debt is, generally speaking, low interest and buys stuff that goes up in value, e.g. a mortgage. Bad debt is generally higher interest and is used to buy stuff that goes down in value. Credit cards to buy a TV. Car loans. You're buying a car, it's going to depreciate. Use sort of 10% as a kind of boundary. If it's 10% or lower, it's deemed to be fairly low interest these days. If it's higher than 10%, I would say that's high interest. I mean, a credit card, you're going to be paying 30% interest on potentially. Store cards, certainly. Generally, credit cards, personal loans, overdrafts, car finance, those are all bad debt by definition because they're generally used to buy stuff that goes down in value.
I don't remember where I got this from, but I like to call good debt reasonable or acceptable debt rather than good debt, because it's not the debt itself that's good, it's the thing that it gives you access to. And on balance, it's reasonable and acceptable to take on that debt in order to get access. But I just found calling something good debt to be really confusing. So if that helps you, then you're like me, which is probably concerning. Student loans are usually seen as a type of good debt, but the details of student loans are complicated and different for every country, so it's important to get advice from people in your local area. But consider the amount of interest you have on your student loans, and then you can judge whether or not it's good debt or bad debt. Car loans are a common type of bad debt that people have, especially in the car-centric world of America. Because it's bad debt, people seem to advise buying cars with cash rather than borrowing, but that's not always realistic for everyone. And in those situations, I found this handy 23-8 rule. That's putting at least 20% down payment on a car, paying off that car loan in less than 3 years, and not having your yearly car payment exceed 8% of your total income. And this is only if you need a car. You should always consider your other options like public transit, especially in Europe, where public transit is generally pretty good. When you're in debt, it's a pretty tough situation, but there are some general guidelines you can follow. It's all about getting your spending under control and increasing your income, which we already covered in a fun little green screen section. I mean, the maths of living below your means is pretty simple, but the practicality can be hard. It's always going to be your income minus your costs. Step 1 would be to stop the accumulation of debt and build an emergency fund. After that, it's all about debt reduction. There seems to be 2 major strategies that people recommend. The first strategy recommends paying off your highest interest debts first, and then moving on to your second highest, and then so on. This is usually the mathematically most efficient way to pay off your debt. However, I've also seen the recommendation of paying off the smallest amount of debt first. This definitely isn't the most efficient way to pay off your debt, but it can definitely help you in your behavior because you get the satisfaction of fully paying off a debt, which can be really encouraging. Either strategy does rely on you to focus on paying off your debt. Credit cards are a common way that people accumulate bad debt. Generally, the advice is that you should be paying off your credit cards in full every month. And if you find it hard to stop yourself from buying things that you can't afford, then it's generally recommended that you don't have credit cards at all. Me personally, I don't have any credit cards because I find it stressful to pay them off. Credit cards generally offer you perks for spending with them, but the perks are only worth it if you pay off your credit cards in full. Otherwise, you're just paying a lot of interest. If you aren't very confident with money or aren't very good at controlling your spending, then maybe credit cards aren't for you. This is a weird section of the video because debt is so personal and complicated and situational. Personally, I think we need to accept our past selves and make decisions for our future self to be debt-free. Feeling shame around debt can lead to avoidance, which isn't really helpful. But letting yourself off the hook for the decisions that got you into debt can also be harmful. Only you know where you land, and it's important to be honest with yourself.
If you're starting from below zero, if you're trying to pay off debt, you've got to be focused, there's no question. But it doesn't take much to just release the pressure valve a little bit. So it might be that you just decide that part of your budget is going to be I'm just going to blow it money, but a little bit. If you're paying off a chunk of debt, that's probably going to be 10 or 20 quid, something like that. Small amounts, but that's often all it takes. I just think that's pragmatic. That's real life. I can't imagine never having any joy in life, but joy doesn't need to be expensive. Go easy on yourself, right? Life is short and you don't want to make yourself poorly over this stuff. Nothing worth gaining in life comes easily. If your goal is financial freedom, a lack of worry about your finances, that's going to take work, but it'll be so worth it.
You know, this video is a bit of a weird one. I learn most things online. I've done a lot of research for this weird thing I call a job. I've done unnecessarily long deep dives on a bunch of topics and destroyed my wall along the way.
I'm scared to be too supportive, or else I'm worried that it's going to be immediately followed.
But I found this topic weirdly difficult. It's hard to learn about money from scratch because you don't know what you don't know. And so many resources that I stumbled across are trying to sell you something or make you feel bad about yourself, especially when it comes to investing. One thing I found when trying to learn about this stuff is that it's really easy to be convinced by something that seems like a good idea. It's only when you learn more and realize what's a scam and what's bad financial advice do you see the glaring red flags. So I decided to call someone who knows a thing or two about financial scams.
Hey, my name is Jani. I am a YouTuber who also makes documentaries, usually covering subjects like financial scams. One of the biggest telltale signs that you are either being scammed or being given pretty poor financial advice is it just sounds too good to be true. Let's take, for example, a Ponzi scheme or something that is promising you, 10%, 12%, 15% returns consistently. It almost seems like in the pitch that this has always been the case. There's never been a losing month on that. You can probably start to get a sense that that's not sustainable. The tactics that most scammers giving out poor financial advice will use usually isn't that dissimilar from what great marketing strategies will use. The idea of using celebrities or testimonials from customers, it's all to kind of get you to be invested in whatever it is you're being pitched on because XYZ also believed in it. With FTX as an example of something that I covered recently, a big part of that was because they had hired a lot of celebrities to do the promoting for their crypto exchange. Another strategy that you'll find with scams is that they will usually try to utilize your fear. Do your due diligence on whatever it is that you think you're getting into that may be beneficial for you. Just Googling their name and putting scam at the end of it, or even just Googling the name and putting Reddit at the end of it just to see what users are saying. That's usually a really good way of being able to tell whether something you're getting into is a scam or just poor financial advice. There is also a strategy that scams will typically use, which is a fear of missing out. You'll normally see in the pitch, there'll be big messages around, you have to do this now, it's only on sale now, it's never going to be at this price today. All of these tactics are designed to make you, again, panic and also feel like if you do not buy it right now, the opportunity is gone. Usually if you're feeling like you're pressured into making a decision very quickly and it's going to be a big financial decision, it's a big red flag and you probably need to take a step back and just pace yourself and actually think, okay, what is it that I'm actually buying here and is it actually worth it for me? And it's really tough, especially if you're in a vulnerable situation financially, to be able to spot this right away because you don't want to. You kind of want to believe that what you're being told is true. And so they'll utilize that fact to make you feel like you have to get in on this now. There is no other date. There is no other time that you can do this. Almost always, and I would arguably say always, that's not the case. You can take at least a step back, a couple hours to just think about the decision, to go and speak to somebody, to go and search online to find out whether what you're about to do is a smart decision.
So while the details of how to handle your money in every little situation might be more complicated than a single YouTube video, I tried to make this video as the place to start when it comes to learning about money. I know that's the thing that I found the hardest when trying to figure this all out. I think the 3 rules that Pete lays out are a really good starting point. Spending less than you earn, insuring against things that you can't control, whether that's with actual insurance or with an emergency fund, and saving for the future. I think that's just a fantastic summary of everything you need to know when it comes to money. That's why he's a professional and I'm just a guy on YouTube. One of the things I really liked about this book is that the first chapter isn't about budgeting or saving or making loads of money. It's about happiness. It's about understanding that money is a tool to help you provide safety, security, and comfort. It's something that can empower you to explore your passions and to support your community. But it's also about learning how to be satisfied with what you have and knowing when you have enough. I think with a lot of finance conversations online, it's about saving the most money or making the most money or being the most mathematically perfect with your cash. But it's important to use money in service of your happiness and fulfillment because What else is there? Anyway, I'll leave a read/watch list in the description for anyone who wants to learn more about the different areas of money. I don't know, I hope this video was helpful.